I'm Greg Kenyon. I am currently serving as the chair of the Iowa State Bar Association Elder Law Section. And I'm here today with Deanna Clingan-Fischer, who's the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And we're going to talk a little bit about her office and what they do. So, Deanna, I will start with the very basic question. What is Iowa's Long-Term Care Ombudsman?
The Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office is an advocate for people who reside in long-term care facilities. That includes nursing homes, residential care facilities, assisted living programs, and elder group homes. Our mission is really to protect the health, safety, welfare, and rights of individuals residing within long-term care facilities, but we're also an available resource to individuals who have questions about the rights of individuals that reside within those facilities, as well as questions about when is it an appropriate time for mom, dad, whomever to go into a long-term care facility. And if that is the case, what are some of the issues, the questions I need to ask if I'm really truly considering placement in a facility? So we're an advocate. We're an advocate for those that reside in facilities.
And while you're talking about the facilities, what are the sort of questions that people are going to ask?
One of the questions that generally comes up is, what should I look for within a facility? And traditionally we encourage people to make visits. And make visits at different times of the day so that you're not just getting one perspective. You may be there during the first shift, the second shift. You need to ask residents and tenants if they're happy, if they're satisfied with the level of service. In addition to not only visiting and asking questions of the staff and the residents or tenants, certainly obtain all admission information, contracts, review contracts, admission agreements, occupancy agreements, because the other question you really want to know, can this facility actually meet the needs of the person that I'm trying to place? And if they can't, you may need to look for a different facility. Another question that generally comes up that we can't answer, but we help guide people to find the answer, relates to, is this a good facility? The Department of Inspections and Appeals has a website, and it's called the Nursing Home Report Card, in which you can go onto their site and you can look up a specific facility to see what their record of surveys and citations are. And so we encourage people, if you're really truly considering a specific facility, take a look at that website and see what are the types of things this facility is being cited for or fined for.
So people are being proactive. You can point them toward those sort of resources. They can do some of the research on their own.
That is correct. And we have a website that has a lot of these resources on it for people just to start them thinking about the questions and directing them to where they need to go.
Is that an easy website address to give?
Our website address is easy to give. It is iowaaging.gov. And there will be a link within our website as to get to the CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services website, which has a similar nursing home report card, as well as the Department of Inspections and Appeals website. If you were looking just generally for the Department of Inspections and Appeals, I'd just go to the State of Iowa's website, go to the departments and click on DIA, or just Department of Inspections and Appeals.
Well, we've touched on a little bit of this, Deanna, but what are the functions of your office?
The Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, again, is an advocate. So what does that mean? We have authority under federal and state law to identify, investigate, and resolve complaints made by or on behalf of long-term care residents, and that remains confidential. We do not share that information unless we have permission from the resident or the tenant themselves to discuss and share that information. We work with the substitute decision maker. If a resident has been deemed to not have capacity to consent, we may end up working with the decision maker to help resolve complaints as well. We provide information to residents on long-term care services and supports. Again, some of those questions we talked about earlier. What do you look for? What do you do? We seek remedies to help protect the health, safety, welfare, and rights. Some of them may be appealing a discharge notice and assisting people in understanding their legal rights. in appealing as well as requesting that there be legal representation to sit in on the hearing or be a part of any of that process. We are not legal representatives. We are an advocate for that resident. So if someone does want legal assistance, we do refer them to legal counsel.
In the course of a year, do you keep statistics on the number of people that you help?
Yes, we do. Actually, there is an annual report that is required by federal and state law. I submitted that annual report, and it is on our website as well, to the governor and every legislator this January. Approximately, and I don't have all of that data. Yes, I do, in fact. We had 1,000. We received 1,106 complaints last federal fiscal year. We served 10,081 residents and tenants that were impacted by complaints or concerns. We provided 6,615 hours of advocacy service beyond complaint handling. So things like this, speaking and educating people about the Ombudsman's office, working with staff and family members to understand what the rights of those residents are or their family members are. And we've also provided 5,604 program activities. Again, that goes to the consultations to facilities and staff. A lot of times the facilities want to do the right thing as well. They just always aren't aware of what those rights are or the legal ramifications are.
So you helped approximately 10,000 people during the year. How many people are in your office are providing the service to these people? That's
a good question. Our office, every state is required to have a long-term care ombudsman program. And they act and interact differently in each state. Iowa's is set up that there's a state long-term care ombudsman, which is me in this instance, and then we certify local long-term care ombudsman. In Iowa, we have 8 local long-term care ombudsmen. They run from having 17 counties to 7 counties. And they approximate about 6,650 beds or people per person. So we have a very few staff to actually implement all the requirements and the mandates that are given forward to us from federal and state law. We also have an involuntary discharge specialist, someone who's just truly focused on helping people understand their rights if they are being discharged from a facility or an assisted living program. We also have volunteer ombudsman program coordinators, so we're actively recruiting volunteers to serve as advocates on behalf of our office as well.
Now, you mentioned the rights of tenants who might receive a discharge notice. Let's talk about the rights of the residents. What are those?
Rights of residents are the same as your rights. Just because I move into a long-term care facility, just because I have a change of address doesn't mean my rights as a citizen change. I still have the right of citizenship to be treated with dignity, respect, to associate with people I choose to associate with, to religious freedom, to privacy. And that's in my treatment, in my interpersonal relationships, with my medical records. I have the right to quality care, so that individuals are actually treating me as a person rather than someone with a disease or an illness or with a disability. I have the right to associate with whomever I choose, unless that has been limited through some type of legal action, and to receive uncensored communication. I have the right to appeal. If I'm given a notice of a discharge, I have the right to appeal that decision and have a due process given to me in order to ensure that my rights are protected. One that continually comes up is I have the right to express and voice my concerns without fear of retaliation.
So that would be concerns if you were a resident of a facility and you're unhappy about something that was happening.
That is correct. Yes.
That they're not supposed to retaliate and kick you out because of that.
They are not. People can, and in relationship to that right, many times people will ask if they can report something anonymously, and we do take anonymous referrals. We will go out and investigate the complaint and the concern. We talk to residents and tenants without giving their names to see if those concerns that we're hearing about are in fact founded or perhaps there's something to that complaint or discussion.
Deanna, you mentioned two different terms. You talked about residents and tenants. Mm-hmm. And what's the distinction?
So residents are individuals who reside in residents are cut that, please. Let's start that over. Residents are individuals who reside in nursing homes or residential care facilities. Tenants are individuals who reside in assisted living programs or elder group homes. And the reason we make the distinction is because there is a nursing home reform law, federal law, which impacts and gives the rights specifically to people who reside in nursing facilities. There is no such federal law for people who reside in assisted living or elder group homes. And so we really have to rely upon Iowa law for those tenant rights and landlord-tenant law for that. So that's another little cog that we help people identify within the system is not only if you're going into assisted living or elder group homes do you need to know what the rights are and look at occupancy agreements, but you also need to realize that landlord-tenant law applies to all the circumstances while you're residing in that assisted living program.
Well, what do you tell people if they were to ask when should they first contact your office?
I would say that anytime someone has a question about a long-term care facility, whether they're considering moving someone there, whether they need to move there themselves, and certainly once they're in a long-term care facility, we are there. No question is too dumb. We are there to serve as an advocate for those individuals. And if it's something that we can handle, we gladly do so. If it's something that we cannot handle, we will refer them to the appropriate resource. So we're the advocate agency. There's always a reason why someone can contact our office and seek information and assistance or file a complaint. Now, if we go into that setting and we discover that there is a violation of law or rule, we will make a referral to the Department of Inspections and Appeals, who is the regulator.
So, Deanna, who should call your office? Does it need to be the individual resident or tenant? Could it be a family member, friend?
It can be anyone with a concern. If it could be a family member, it could be the resident or a tenant, it could be a friend that's visited that sees concerns, and it could be someone who has or sees concerns not for the person they're visiting, but for someone else within that facility. We also receive calls from staff or visitors who attend, maybe a church member. So it can be anyone, seriously, anyone who has a concern or suspects that something is going on within that population. They can give us a call. And our phone number is, they can certainly call us at 866-236-1430. Again, the 866-236-1430, or send us an email request via our website, iowaaging.gov.
When you give the phone number, it leads you to think that there might be an immediate operator on the end of the phone can deal with the complaint. Does that happen? Does it staff all the time?
The toll-free 866 number is actually answered 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. If someone does have a concern or fears for someone's safety, we always encourage them to call 911 or call if they feel that there is abuse, neglect, or exploitation rising to a level of concern. They can call the Department of Human Services abuse hotline. But we are not an emergency response system, and so if it is a concern, if it is an emergency jeopardy situation, they need to contact the Department of Human Services or call 911.
So the calls come in, and should a person expect that there's a wait list before your office would have a chance to respond to them?
So what happens when someone calls our toll-free number is they will be referred or, in essence, referred to the local long-term care ombudsman that handles that area. There is a specific number for that individual, which is on our website as well. If you want to just call the local long-term care ombudsman directly, people can do that, and that number's on our website. What happens is, because of the nature of our jobs, we are in facilities quite often or meeting with residents, tenants, and family members. So when we are meeting with individuals and listening to their concerns, they are our priority. And so if someone would call during one of those instances, they would more than likely get our voicemail, but they are welcome to leave a message or just leave their name and phone number, and the local ombudsman will return their call as soon as possible. We do, our plan is always to get back to people within one business day.
Earlier, when we were talking about the types of facilities, you mentioned that elder group homes were one of the facilities that you typically would be involved with. Populations of facilities are not only elders. There can be younger people with disabilities of some kind that live in the facility. Are they also under your umbrella?
They are. Actually, we don't necessarily look at the age. We look at where do they reside. So, and that's one of the differences between state's ombudsman's office. Our state has chosen to have the long-term care ombudsman be available to serve any resident or tenant that resides in a nursing home, residential care facility, assisted living program, or elder group home. If you go to another state, it may be very well limited to 60 and older.
Deanna, you've given us some examples of the sort of things that might happen. Can we maybe drill down and talk about a specific sort of complaint you might get, an example of a specific complaint, and then what happened with it, how it unfolded?
Sure. I mean, complaints range. There's a great range in complaints. And nothing is simple, because when it impacts the rights or the quality of life of a resident and it's important to them, it's important to us. Something that maybe seemed trivial to some of us is not trivial to that person. So we take every complaint very seriously. But one of the complaints could be that I don't ever have water in my pitcher and I can't get up to get my own water, but yet I need to stay hydrated. So that could be one complaint. An easy solution in that case might be changing that person's care plan to ensure that water is always on their bedside and then in a pitcher and a glass. That might be an easier one. We've had some instances where we get complaints or calls that my call light's not being answered in a timely fashion. And within Iowa law, there are requirements and parameters as to when staff need to respond to someone's call light. So if that individual is not being responded to and they get up and they fall and they break something, certainly that can elevate and escalate the types of issues that we handle and address. We see issues that are caused within the facility from staffing or lack of staffing. We see issues that are brought on from families that come into the facility who are trying to exert their wishes onto the wishes of the resident or the tenant. So sometimes it's an education that, just because you're the guardian, just because you're the attorney in fact or the agent, you cannot make these decisions. Educating them as to their role, or educating the facility as to what their role is. So an example could be visitation. We have individuals that will have always had a long-standing dispute or feud with their sibling, and all of a sudden they become the decision maker, the attorney in fact, or a guardian, and they tell the facility to restrict that individual from visiting. So we have been able to work with the facility and the legal counsel for the facility in most cases to really figure out what's in the best interest of the resident. What does the resident want? And if we've met with the resident and they say, yes, I would really like to visit with that child, then we work to make that happen. And it could be, we can be very creative in making that happen. It could be that we talk to the attorney in fact or the guardian and they're like, okay, I didn't realize mom or dad wanted that, and it happens. We could help educate the facility as to what the rights of that person are, and we could perhaps set up supervised visitation. So we can be very creative in coming up with answers and responses, but our goal and the person that's at the center of everything we do is the resident or the tenant. And if they don't want us to do something, we don't do something.
One of the scenarios that I've seen happen or occur from time to time is that for some reason the resident is being discharged. They receive a notice from the facility that they're going to have to move out. And this sometimes is for non-payment, sometimes it's because of level of care issues. Well, tell us a little bit about your role or the role of your office when a notice of discharge is received.
So under state law, every facility needs to issue a notice of discharge if they're considering discharging that resident from their facility. And there are reasons for that. It has to be a legitimate reason. Under Iowa law, every discharge notice needs to be sent to the Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, as well as the Department of Inspections and Appeals and Disability Rights Iowa if the resident is someone with a disability or a mental illness. We get that notice, and our job then is to contact the facility and find out, why are you trying to discharge this person? And if we find that it's a reason that we can help resolve, especially if the resident wants to stay in that facility, then we will work to try to resolve that, and hopefully then the notice of discharge will be revoked. Let's say we can't get it resolved, then our job is to work with the resident and their decision maker, if any, to follow their wishes. So some say, I don't want to do anything about it, I'm happy to leave, then that's the end of it. But if they do want to appeal that decision, we assist them in understanding the process, knowing their due process rights, and telling them what they need to do to appeal. If they want legal counsel at that point, we put them in touch with attorneys who can assist with that appeal process or represent them at the hearing.
If the hearing ends up and the administrative law judge determines that the person should be discharged, are they ushered to the street at that moment?
So an administrative law judge in their order generally says that the facility cannot discharge this individual unless they have located a safe place to discharge. So the safe place needs to be able to meet that level of care need for the resident. So the facility, even if they've won in the discharge, they still have to keep that resident until a safe discharge placement can be found. Our role sometimes is helping that family, that decision maker, that resident find other options and alternative placements.
So I'm going to wrap you up here, but if a person has a problem, they can call you, and the number again, operators are standing by.
At least 8 to 4:30, 866-236-1430.
Okay.
And they can visit our website and find the direct phone number for the local long-term care ombudsman as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.